In this video, I'm going to present you my research on the RSK workshop assignments regarding the topic of business decision making. I will start with the literature review, then the methodology, then the conducted research, qualitative and quantitative, and then the conclusion. For literature review, that have been set the independent variable demographic characteristic of a business student, whereas the dependent variable is the decision-making style, namely rational, dependent, intuitive, avoidant, and spontaneous. The relationship of these variables will be investigated with the help of the following literature review. All in all, 5 articles have been reviewed. All of them are based on the article from Scott and Bruce regarding the 5 general decision-making styles, namely rational, dependent, intuitive, avoidant, and spontaneous. Salo and I would examine the relationship between decision-making styles and stress means with a computerized questionnaire of 203 participants who were police investigators. They found out that there was no gender difference in decision-making in 3 of these 5 styles. Females show a lower score on rational and higher score on dependent, and also avoidant style as male participants. Robert Liu used a sample of 223 management undergraduates to examine the relationship between the demographic variables of gender and age and the decision-making styles according to Scott and Bruce. He conducted a t-test, and that also showed that there was no significant gender difference on any of these 5 decision-making styles. De Bruin et al. Used a cluster analysis to investigate the relationship between decision-making profiles that differed by age and gender and the decision-making styles according to Scott and Bruce. They identified 3 different cluster profiles for decision-making: the effective experiential mode, the dependent, and the independent and self-controlled profile. Their research found out that there's a significant difference in 2 of these 3 profiles. Females are less likely to be an effective experiential profile than males. However, women were more likely to have an interpersonally oriented dependent profile. In contrast to that, men were more likely than women to be in the effective experimental profile. Sadler and Smith employed 2 independent samples of each 200 business students undergraduate at 2 UK business schools, and their analysis of variance did not show any effects of gender on the decision-making styles according to Scott and Bruce. All in all articles provide an analysis about decision-making styles and the demographic variable gender. However, not all of them are referring to the topic of business. In research of Lee and Sadler, Smith and Spicer, the strongest relation to business was found since they had interviewed business students for their analysis. Furthermore, these 2 studies are essential for this present research, as I have analyzed the full range of Scott and Bruce. In contrast to that, the other 2 studies focused more on other factors that influence decision-making, and the effect of gender was only analyzed in addition. Due to the mentioned restriction, the foundation for this research regarding the demographic variable gender will be based on Lee and Sadler and Smith, but for the extension of the research, also the other articles will take into consideration. The conceptual framework will be that we have business decision-making and the demographic variable gender, but this research also will be extended by the demographic variable of business experience. Now we came up with 3 research questions. The first is there's a gender difference regarding business students' decision-making styles, namely rational, dependent, intuitive, spontaneous, and avoidant. The second one is their relationship between business students' decision-making styles and their business experience. And the last research question is what factors may negatively influence the decision-making process of management team in your internship company. Now we came to our methodology. The well-known research onion from Saunders will be used as a guidance on how to develop a research methodology. For research philosophy, there are 4 different paradigms, but the one that is most suitable for this research is pragmatism, as it is aimed that mixed method, both qualitative and quantitative, are possible and possibly high appropriate within one study. Pragmatism is an external multiple view chosen to best enable answering the research question. Now we came to sample and sampling techniques. In this research, we use a combination of techniques: probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling, we use surveys, and non-probability sampling, we use interviews. For non-probability sampling, we use purpose sampling, as the interviewees will be carefully selected based on their knowledge, and purpose sampling because of the possibility to select samples that will help to answer the research question. The most suitable purposive sampling method for us is heterogeneous sampling, as participants with distinct characteristics are chosen in order to ensure variability with the primary data. Probability sampling, for that we used the technique of cluster random because the questionnaire will only be sent to IBS students, so they are building one cluster group. Now we came to data collection procedure. We start with secondary data. This is data that already have been collected for another purpose, and these data can be documentary, survey-based, or multiple source. For this research, we use multiple source data, as it is a mix of documentary and survey-based data, because we used previous studies that already include surveys. We reviewed 5 journal articles, as you can see below. And the first one is Decision-Making Style, Stress and Gender Among Investigators by Ilka Salo and Carl M. Alwood. The second one is an examination of the General Decision-Making Style questionnaire in 2 UK samples by David P. Spicer and Eugene Sadler-Smith. The third one is a psychometric evaluation of General Decision-Making Style inventory by Robert Lee. 4, variation on decision-making profiles by age and gender, a cluster analytical approach by Bruyne de Bruyne et al. And the last one is decision-making study development and assessment of new measure by Scott and Bruce. Now we came to the data collection procedure for the primary data. For that we used semi-structured interviews because the researcher will have a list of themes and questions to be covered, although these may vary from interview to interview. These are non-standardized face-to-face interviews that will be conducted in German. Also, furthermore, we use internet-mediated questionnaires with rating questions of a 5-point rating scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. Data analysis, all interviews will be transcribed and summarized in English. After the interviews have been transcribed, the data will be summarized, categorized, and unitized. In order to facilitate this process, Atlas TI will be used. The data from the questionnaire will be analyzed with the Data Management and Statistical Analysis Software package SPSS version 25. Validity and reliability. For secondary data, all articles are peer-reviewed and published years ago. So they were cited several times and seems reliable, and the validity is also given. For primary research, the chance of interviewer bias and interviewee bias is very low, as parties know each other but not too near. The semi-structured interviews are not necessarily intended to be repeatable since they reflect reality at the time they were collected. So this is the only threat we have with primary data. Now we came to our research findings. For qualitative research, we had first research question: what factors may negatively influence the decision-making process in your management? And together with the 2 interviewees, we identified negative factors that can influence decision-making as follows: the personal attitude in making decisions regarding the decision style the person used, then the stress level of persons, the self-doubt of individuals, the time for decision-making regarding the importance of decisions, so the deadline time, then the age of individuals, which is affected by the work experience, because work experience can cause bias for specific situations, and the satisfaction with the job, which influences the motivation to contribute to decision-making process. The second question we ask in our interview is: how do you try to adjust these factors so that they can contribute positively to the decision-making process? We figured out 3 methods that already have been adjusted in the companies that are training. They are trained how to make decisions in a team and how unconsciously factors can influence the individual decision approach. A supervision with a mediator is done to talk about personal situation and problems that can influence the people in their job. And the third method is workshops to learn a structured and efficient way of decision making. The third question we asked is: how have these adjustments improved the decision making process in your company? And figured out 3 results. The first result is a lower stress level due to the structured and learned way to deal with decision making. Then the avoidance of adding personal bias into the process, for example in the discussion process. And this all leads to less time-consuming decision-making process. Now we came to our quantitative research. For that, we used the given data Excel sheet to conduct the SPS analysis for the 2 of the 3 research questions. The first question was: is there a gender difference regarding business students' decision-making style, namely rational, dependent, intuitive, spontaneous, and avoidant? As we want to compare 2 means, the gender difference and the decision-making styles, we conducted an independent sample t-test. We have a group statistic and can see that 80 females participated and 61 males participated. Also, you can see that the standard deviation is quite similar, which is important for our results. We set up a null hypothesis, which is there's no gender difference regarding business decision-making styles, and the alternative hypothesis is that there is a gender difference regarding business student style. As I already explained, the standard deviation are quite the same. We expect a significant level of 0.5%, so 0.05. But here you can see that the significance level is higher than the expected significance level. Therefore, we assume that the variances are equal. So we only have to read the first line of each variable. Yeah. Here you can see in the significance of the t-test that for intuitive, for rational, for avoidant, and for spontaneous, the significance level are above with 0.05. So there's no significant gender difference for this variable, for this decision-making styles, but for the dependent, the significance level is lower than 0.05, so there is a slight difference in gender for this variable. The second research question is there a relationship between business students' decision-making and their business experiences? As we want to test now the relationship between two variables, we conducted a Parsons chi-square test. In the group statistic, we can see that 140 participants take place because two of these failed the requirements to be included in this. We set up the null hypothesis. There is no relationship between business students' decision making and their business experience, and the alternative hypothesis that there is a relationship between business decision making and the business experience. Now we figured out the results for each decision-making style. For dependent, we see that here you can see the chi-square value and here the significance level, and we also accept for this conducted test the significance level of 5%, so 0.05. In all of the decision-making style, we had a higher significance level of 0.05, so accept the null hypothesis of no relationship between decision-making styles and experience. I will shortly go through all this once. Here again, above the significance level of 0.05. For intuitive, the same, there's nearly 1. Here is also avoidant. For spontaneous. Yeah, in conclusion, the qualitative analysis identified that other factors can influence decision-making as well. Some of these factors were already identified in previous research, for example, in Salo and Iwood and Liu. They talked about stress level, age, working conditions, and sleep. The quantitative analysis showed nearly no gender difference regarding business decision-making styles, which is consistent with the research of Robert Lee and Sadler, Smith, and Spicer. We only found in the independent sample t-test that there is a slight gender difference in the dependent decision-making style. The research extension with the factor of work experience also showed that there is no significant relationship to decision-making process. Yeah, this was my findings for that.